daughter.
Well, I guess
It was just a
lemon and
We'll call the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order at 7:30. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Patricia Pietzu. Alderman Jettie will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman Gidge. Alderman Harry Gathright.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderwoman Shoshana Kelly. Alderwoman Kelly.
It's fine.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola. Present. Alderman Tenza. Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman McCarthy.
Present.
We have 12 members present.
I know that Alderman Tenza is looking for a parking space, which is fairly rare at the moment, so he should be joining us shortly. It's possible that some of our other members as well.
We do have parking garages.
And the first floor of it is actually full.
The people who were here for selectmen training were walking out as I walked in, so that should free up a few spaces shortly.
There he is. Let the record show that Alderman Tenza has found a parking space. Also present, Corporation Counsel Stephen A. Bolton and Mayor James Donchis. Does the mayor wish to address the board?
Thank you, Mr. President. On your desk tonight, we have the proposed budget for fiscal 19. This is being introduced a couple months earlier than we have in the past because we know that you may need time to study it and understand it, especially for the new members of the board, and to give those people on the budget committee some relief so they're not here every night over a period of 4 weeks late into the evening. Now, the budget is, I'm going to say, a tight budget. The amount that it would increase spending over the amount appropriated in the current year, which is fiscal 18, is 1.3%. Now, that base includes 2 supplemental appropriations that were done during the year. If those supplemental appropriations were excluded, the budget would be up from the budget passed last year by 1.6%. The driving factor here is the fact that we have a reevaluation coming, a state-ordered reevaluation, which we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but given the rather rapid increases in residential home values, it could result in a shift from some value from commercial, which has not gone up as much as residential possibly, to residential, which would mean a tax increase without the budget even being a factor. So with that in mind, in order to minimize, to lessen any impact of the reevaluation, I've kept the budget, I think, very tight at either 1.3 or 1.6%, depending on how you look at it. But to get there, we've definitely had to impose some discipline or impose some things that would not be ideal, maybe. I've had to limit all of the major departments, those being police, fire, and schools, to a 2.5% increase, despite the requests by them for more money than that. And you will see other things in the budget. The SURF is funded at a lower level than last year, and some other things have been reduced. So as you go through the budget, you will see that I think it's as I said, very tight. A 1.6% increase is, I think, reasonable under the circumstances that we're facing. And in order to minimize a property tax increase that we know may be coming as a result of the state-ordered revaluation. Also on the budget is the final action on the teacher's contract. As I've said before, I think this is a major step forward in fairly compensating our teachers for the very important work that they do in the classroom. We've had a problem over the last few years in terms of an out-migration of trained, seasoned, mid-career teachers for districts nearby, such as Amherst, Hollis, even Manchester, where mid-career teachers are paid at a higher level than the current contract pays Nashua teachers. The contract that you have before you, and which has been recommended by the Budget Committee, improves that situation considerably, and I hope that you will follow the recommendation of the Budget Committee and approve that contract. Finally, coming up very shortly is our recognition of Chief Gallipo for his many years of service to the city of Nashua. We have, of course, a proclamation or a resolution that's going to be passed by the board in which we'll read to him. But I'd like to say on a personal level that I've very much enjoyed working with Chief Gallipo. He is a very dedicated city employee, dedicated to the mission of Nashua Fire Rescue, which is to help people in all circumstances. And I would also say that we embarked on the Safe Stations program in November of 2016, which I think has achieved some significant results and is also being used as a model in other places around the country. And we could not have done that without the active cooperation and support of both NFR, the fire department, and especially Chief Gallipo, who led the effort from the perspective of the fire department. So I know he's going to be retiring on April 1st and is going to be going on a few vacations with his wife, and that's well deserved. And I just want to say that he really deserves the community's thanks, and we really owe him for all of that he's done for the city, both in recent years and throughout the 38 years of his career. That's all I have. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Any responses to the remarks of the mayor? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your remarks, but I would like to remind you that tomorrow up at Concord, and being a state rep, is also a big red letter day for the city as far as commuter rail. I think in looking at the calendar, the vote will come up for tomorrow to try to put $4 million back into the 10-year transportation plan in the state. Right now, it seems to be hijacked and removed from the budget. Even though Nashua is seeking, and to remind you, the private authority in doing the rail, the $4 million will still go to a track study. It's basically no strings attached to it too much, and why it's being hijacked from the state. Now, I know, Mr. Mayor, we did come out with a resolution from this very board, which reminds, and I hope everybody in our delegation did receive that, to understand that this board is not really mandating, but is requesting that our delegates that we have sent up to Concord to remind them of their duties to vote as Nashuans and try to get something as worthwhile, commuter rail into Nashua, which I think will go for a long, long way of economic vitality for our city. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you would like to comment on my remarks or not on that.
Well, Alderman O'Brien, of course I agree completely. It would be a big step forward if we could complete the planning for the Capital Corridor project, $4.4 million without the expenditure of any state funds would certainly advance the chances of getting commuter rail in Nashua. We are pursuing, as you know, a two-horse strategy, as someone put it. One being the $4 million that Alderman O'Brien has spoken about, the other being the private approach which we are working on with the Boston Surface Rail Corporation. I would just remind the legislators that 35.1% of the state's gross product, the gross state product, is generated in the Manchester-Nashua area, and that we really need, we are growing jobs down here. We need the state's help to continue to grow the economy of our region and the state by getting their assistance with respect to our infrastructure. So thank you for raising that, Alderman and State Rep O'Brien.
Any other responses to the remarks of the mayor? Alderman Jettie?
Mayor, the 1.3 and the 1.6% increase that you talked about sounds like it would be within the spending cap. Could you comment on what the status of the spending cap is in your mind, and whether or not this would be within that, if it's still something that we have to stick by?
Well, the Hillsborough County Superior Court ruled that the spending cap that Nashua has is inconsistent with state law and is unenforceable. And however, for the purposes of illustration only, within the budget, you will see the spending cap calculation, what it would be if the spending cap were still enforceable. The budget that is proposed here, that I've proposed, is $1,083,000 below what the spending cap, were it still in effect, would have allowed. So this is considerably below. But again, the point here is that we know we have a reevaluation coming. The facts suggest that residential property has gone up a lot, and commercial, maybe shopping centers and other things like that, have not gone up as much. Therefore, there could be a shift towards residential in terms of the whole tax pie, meaning potentially, possibly, we're going to try to lessen its impact as much as possible, but meaning a tax increase for residences without regard to the budget. So I've proposed a very lean budget which would mitigate, lessen the impact of the reevaluation. But again, were the spending cap still enforceable, this budget would be $1,083,000 below the amount allowed.
Thank you.
Any further responses? If not, recognition period.
First reading of Resolution 18-016, recognizing Chief Stephen G. Gallipo of Nashua Fire Rescue.
If there are no objections, the rules will be so far suspended as to allow for second reading of R 1816.
Second reading of Resolution 18-016, recognizing Chief Stephen G. Gallipo of Nashua Fire Rescue.
Alderwoman Melissa Golia?
Yes, I would move for final passage of R 18-016, recognizing Chief Stephen Gallipo of Nashua Fire and Rescue.
Motion is for final passage of R 18016. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and R 18016 is adopted. Alderwoman Melissa Golia and Mayor Donchis. Chief Gallipo?
Whereas on June 1, 2015, Stephen G. Gallipo became the 13th fire chief for the city of Nashville Fire Rescue. There have been a lot more mayors than that, so Chief Gallipo is a native of Nashville and a second-generation Nashville Fire Rescue firefighter. His father, Wilford Gallipo, served Nashville Fire Rescue from 1958 to 1993. Whereas in March 1980, Chief Gallipo was appointed to the position of firefighter in the city of Nashua and has risen through the ranks over the last 35 years. He was promoted to lieutenant in 1996, captain in 2000, deputy chief in 2007, and assistant chief in 2011. Whereas during his time with Nashua Fire Rescue, Chief Gallipo held a variety of auxiliary positions within the department. He was an original member of the SMART Hazardous Materials Response Team as a certified hazardous material technician, and held positions with the Nashua Firemen's Relief Association and the Nashua Fire Rescue Awards Committee. He was the department's representative during the development stages of the Kronos project and represented Nashua in the local emergency planning committee and the Sauhegan Mutual Aid Association. He has been supportive and instrumental in the planning and execution of the Nashua Safe Stations program. Whereas Chief Gallipo earned an associate's degree in fire science from New Hampshire Technical College, Laconia, and a bachelor's degree in fire service administration from Granite State College. He also holds a certificate in Homeland Security and Emergency Disaster Management from Rivier University and participated in the Greater Leadership Nashua program in 2010. And whereas he also coached high school football at Bishop Burton in Nashua South, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of Nashua and the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Nashua recognize Chief Stephen Gallipo on his many years of service and contributions to the City of Nashua. So, thank you very much. Here's the key to the city, enabling you to come in at any time.
He's running right in.
I thought the fire department already had keys to the city.
That's a big secret.
They give one to the station.
Reading the minutes of previous meetings, if there are no objections, minutes of the Board of Aldermen meetings of February 27th, 2018, and of March 1st, 2018 will be accepted, placed on file, and the readings will be suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
Communication from Brian S. McCarthy, President, Board of Aldermen, relative special Board of Aldermen meeting.
If there are no objections, the communication will be accepted and placed on file. And the other communication that was on the agenda has been withdrawn. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. 3 people have signed up. Adam Marcoux.
Good evening. Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane, President of the Nashua Teachers Union. First, I offer my apologies to Alderman McCarthy for mistakenly using his name in an email to my staff regarding his abstention at the budget meeting. My apologies. We did clarify that it was Alderman O'Brien and expressed his, I guess, sympathy to us that he had to abstain, and we respect your stance on that. I'm here to obviously speak in favor of the contract that we spent over a year negotiating with the school board. This is in replace of a bridge contract that lasted 1 year, and as mentioned by the mayor, this contract goes and moves us forward when it comes to our salary schedule. As I've told the membership in the Board of Education, it's not perfect, but it's a start and it's moving us in the right direction. And it's 4 years of stability for our teachers, for our school district, and most importantly for our students. I wanted to thank the Budget Committee and Alderman Dowd for their formal support and a unanimous decision to send it forward to the full board. And I look forward to hopefully having a unanimous decision tonight to send forward to the membership. Thank you.
Ken Bowden.
Hello, Rainey Bodwin, Burke Street, Nashua. I also do work here in like public health. I'm here to talk about 018-008. I just wanted to make a brief comment on it. I did send some of the concerns that I had over to a few folks earlier, so I thank you all for looking at that. But I just had something to ask the board, is to just take a little bit of time to really look into that merit plan. The plan itself looks like a good plan, but the grid which was made, the old grid versus where new folks or folks that land on that new grid versus the old grid, a lot of people have gone down. And that's what I really would ask the board to really take a critical look at, to see where folks were and where they land up in this new plan. That's all. Thank you.
Gary Hoffman?
Gary Hoffman, 38 Perm Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm here to speak in favor of R18-008, the new collective bargaining agreement that's been tentatively agreed with the Board of Education, the Nashua Teachers Union. First thing, I'd like to thank the Budget Committee for unanimously passing this agreement a couple weeks ago. Alderman Jetty had asked a question about the spending cap. I know that it's been deemed unenforceable by the courts, but I'm sure it'll still be used in planning purposes at the very least. But the number was 1.9% this year. I confirmed it with the CFO. The city government inflation was 3% last year. So no matter what happens, for at least for the next 3 years, that 3% number will be with us. So it's likely to, just for a baseline. So, if you're curious about any of this information, feel free to contact me. I keep spreadsheets on it all. But regarding the new collective bargaining agreement, I guess in terms of planning, this deal is unique in the fact that previous collective bargaining agreements that have been brought before this board, usually the expensive parts of the budget are towards the end, are in years 3 or 4, and then it tends to be leaner in the beginning. It's sort of, I've always thought that's kind of a psychological break because people always assume the future is going to be better than present conditions. This agreement actually does the opposite. This agreement becomes less expensive in years 3 and 4 than it is in the beginning of the contract. And realize year 1's already paid for, it has already been budgeted. Years 3 and 4, I believe the cost increase is actually below 2%. So as a board going forward and planning, it's nice to have an agreement where the numbers actually go down and it becomes actually more affordable. So it's something to consider. Also, just by passing this agreement, it is going to improve morale in the public schools. I am a public school teacher, as many of you know. I view this contract as more 10 years in the making. The last time we had significant movement on the salary schedule was 2008, and so a lot of teachers have been waiting for about 10 years, and some stopped waiting a few years ago, like Mayor Daunt just said, and did move to Amherst and even Manchester in some cases. So I urge you to unanimously support this agreement, and thank you.
Communications requiring final approval.
There are none.
Petitions,
There are none.
nominations, appointments, and elections.
To the Honorable Board of Aldermen, I have this day appointed Michael Watt of 5 Strawberry Bank Road, Nashua, as an alternate member to the Downtown Improvement Committee for a term to expire March 31st, 2021. And I have this day appointed Brian Edwards of 1 Rice Avenue, Nashua, to the Mine Falls Park Advisory Committee for a term to expire September 1, 2019, and respectfully request these appointments be confirmed.
If there are no objections, the appointments by the mayor will be accepted as read and referred to the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee.
Joint convention with the Library Board of Trustees.
If there are no objections, the Board of Aldermen will now meet in joint convention with the Library Board of Trustees for the purpose of electing a trustee. And I will call for nominations. Somebody have a...
As the Library Board of Trustees President Skip Barrett couldn't be with us tonight, Linda LaFlamme, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to nominate Manuel Espizia.
The name of Manuel Espizia has been placed in nomination. Are there any other nominations? There being no others, I will declare the nominations closed and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderman Wilshire. Alderman Gidge. Alderman Herrick Gathright. Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Clee. Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Shoshana Kelly. Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Lizzie Kohler.
Yes, Manuel Espezia.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
Alderman McCarthy.
Yes.
Trustee Barrett. Trustee Bergeron. Trustee DeSalters. Trustee Jacquez. Trustee Clump. Trustee Laflamme. Trustee Pinzano. Mayor Donches.
Yes, Manny Espetia.
We have 15 votes for Emmanuel Especia.
I declare Manny Espetia duly appointed to the Board of Library Trustees for a term to expire March 31st, 2025. Would you come forward for the oath of office? All you gotta say is.
You will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all of the duties incumbent upon you as a trustee of the Nashville Public Library, according to the best of your ability, and agreeably to the rules and regulations of the city charter and the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire. So help you God. Very good.
If there are no objections, the convention will now arise.
Joint convention with Woodlawn Pinewood Cemetery Board of Trustees.
If there are no objections, the Board of Aldermen will now meet in joint convention with the Woodlawn Pinewood Cemetery's Board of Trustees for the purpose of electing 2 trustees, and I will ask for nominations. Mr. Jensen.
Niles Jensen, Chairman of Woodlawn and Pinewood Cemeteries. The Board of Trustees nominate David Aponovich and Niles Jensen for 5-year terms to expire April 2023.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will declare the nominations closed and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderman Wilshire.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Dowd.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Clee.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Laws.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Karen.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman Jettie.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderwoman Lizzie Kohler.
David Aponovich and Niles Jensen.
Alderman Tenza.
David Aponovich and Niles Jensen.
Alderman Schmidt.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman O'Brien.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Alderman McCarthy.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Trustee Aponovich. Trustee Buslevich. Trustee Dana Farrell.
David Aponovich and Niles Jensen.
Trustee Charles Farwell. Trustee Frizzell. Trustee Jensen.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
Trustee McLaughlin. Trustee Whitmore. Mayor Donches.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich.
We have 17 votes for Niles Jensen and 17 votes for David Aponovich.
Niles Jensen and David Aponovich are duly appointed to the Woodlawn Pinewood Cemeteries Board of Trustees for terms to expire March 31st, 2023. I don't think Mr. Aponovich is with us. Mr. Jensen, would you come forward for the oath of office?
Raise your right hand, please. You solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as the trustee of the Woodlawn Pinewood Cemetery according to the best of your ability, faithfully perform the rules and regulations and charter of the United States. So help you God. Thank you.
If there are no objections, the joint convention will now arise.
Joint convention with Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees.
If there are no objections, the Board of Aldermen will now meet in joint convention with the Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees for the purpose of electing 3 trustees, and I will ask for nominations.
President, trustees of Edgewood Cemetery nominate, Doug Baca, Charles Hall, Brian Law.
Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, I will declare the nominations closed and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Alderman Wilshire.
Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderman Harry Gathright.
Douglas Barker, Kyle, I didn't get his last name, and Brian Law.
Alderman Dow.
Yes, Doug Barker, Charles Paul, and Brian Laird.
Alderman Clee.
Yes, Doug Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderman Laws.
Yes, I just forgot all their names. Doug Barker, Brian Law, and Charles Hall. Thank you, Trish.
Alderman Karen.
Law name's hard to remember.
Alderman
Doug Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes. Doug Barker, Charles Paul, and Brian Law.
Alderman Jettie.
Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, Brian Law.
Alderwoman Release Gola.
Yes, Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderman Tenza.
Doug Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderman Schmidt. Doug Barker, Brian Law, and Charles Hall.
Alderman O'Brien.
Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Alderman McCarthy.
Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Trustee Andre.
Douglas Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
Trustee Douglas Barker. Trustee Alan Barker. Trustee Cullen. Trustee Charles Hall. Trustee Norman Hall. Trustee Hollis. Trustee Maffey. Trustee Slattery. Mayor Donches.
Doug Barker, Charles Hall, and Brian Law.
We have 16 votes for Douglas Barker, 16 votes for Charles Hall, and 16 votes for Brian Law.
Douglas Barker and Charles Hall are duly appointed to the Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees for a term to expire March 31st, and Brian Law is duly appointed to the Board of Trustees for a term to expire March 31st, 2020, and I don't believe any of those individuals are here, so they will be sworn in at a later date. If there are no objections, the convention will now arise. Reports of committees, if there are no objections, the report of the Budget Review Committee of February 28, 2018 will be accepted and placed on file. If there are no objections, the report of the Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee of March 5th, 2018 will be accepted and placed on file. If there are no objections, the report of the joint PEDC and Committee on Infrastructure meeting of March 2nd, 2018 will be accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of the mayor's appointments.
Memorial Board of Trustees.
If there are no objections, I will declare William J. DuBois Jr. of 11 Pickering Way, Nashua, duly appointed to the Hunt Memorial Board of Trustees for a term to expire January 31st, 2023. Is Mr. DuBois here? He'll be sworn in at a later date.
Planning Board.
If there are no objections, I will declare Sean McGinnis, 30 Shelburne Road, Nashua, duly appointed as an alternate member to the Planning Board for a term to expire March 31st, 2019, and I don't believe Mr. McGinnis is here either. Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution 18-008, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union Local 1044 AFT, AFL-CIO, from September 1, 2017 through August 31, 2021, and related transfers.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R18008, and I'd like to speak to it.
Motion is for final passage of R18008. Alderman Dowd?
Yes, just a couple of quick things. One, this process that's taking place in this contract is something that the Board of Education has tried to do for many years. They had many issues with the step process, and now they're going with years of service, which will make it far easier for going forward and also be more equitable for the teachers. Also, there's no one from the school department or the Board of Education here this evening because they have a public hearing on their budget this evening, and it's going on as we speak.
Alderwoman Mozigolia?
Yes, may I ask for a roll call, please?
Certainly. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. President. Due to the employment of my daughter with the National School Department as a school nurse, I declare a conflict and I will not be voting.
Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Wilshire. Yes. Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderman Cleese.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi-Gola.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Ryan has sustained. Alderman McCarthy.
Yes.
We have 12 yeas.
Motion carries and R18008 is adopted. Unfinished business ordinances.
Second reading of ordinance 18-008, revisions to the personnel chapter of the ordinances in the merit plan.
Alderwoman Karen?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of 0-18-008, and I'd like to speak on that, please.
Motion is for final passage of 018-008. Alderwoman Karen?
Yes, thank you. I know in the last few days, there's been phone calls going back and forth and emails concerning this. First of all, I feel bad that people who had questions or concerns could not be at the personnel meeting because we did have the HR person there as well as the personnel merit employee board. But this project has been ongoing for the last 10 years, and the people in HR as well as the personnel board have been working on this for the last year and a half. And I know there's some concerns. Nothing's perfect, as Mr. Markku mentioned about contracts. But if we don't put something in place, this is going to sit here for an even longer period of time. And that means cost analysis and raises are going to be a lot different. So my feeling is that we put this and take a vote, approve this, and put some stipulations that the HR department as well as the personnel board take up these concerns from these half a dozen or so staff people and come back to the personnel committee with their recommendations, findings. I have to say, as a member of the Board of Aldermen, but prior to that, I worked for the city for 40 years. And I know it's difficult when we were dealing with this, back when they started with the Hayes report. We were not always happy, but we also understood that the Board of Aldermen is not the dictator of where people are in positions, in salary scales, and what have you. So I just want to make sure that we're all working as a team. We certainly want to keep our employees. We want to keep them happy. But we also have to think about the taxpayers and our budget as a whole for the city. So I hope that my colleagues will move forward with this so that we can take the next step to help our merit employees, these 122 people, get back onto a grids and pay raises and plans for the future. Thank you.
Further discussion? Alderman Dowd?
I'm not a member of Alderman Karen's committee, but I was here that evening. I know this has been going on for many years. I was interested and asked several questions, and they were all answered to my satisfaction, and I fully support this.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
I was one of the persons that was received emails about this particular 18-008. And I do have a concern, and I think there was a gentleman that stood, he had a concern as well. So I did talk to Alderman Karen, and as she stated, that she would like to see this pass, but it's really not the end because it's going to go back to the committee and the HR to try to work out something with the people that were very unhappy about the move and the pay scale change.
Mayor Donchis, do you want to address how that will be handled after the?
Well, it certainly would be possible for HR, Mr. Budrow, who happens to be here, as well as the Personnel Advisory Board, to go to the committee and discuss any issues. I mean, and that would be no problem. Now, whether that would result in changes is a different matter, but certainly the issues that have been raised can be discussed with the Personnel Committee.
Alderwoman Wilshire.
I think that, excuse me, that said, I will support this. I got a few phone calls today and some emails about this, and, you know, some issues that weren't brought up before us when we met with the Personnel Advisory Board and the HR manager, Mr. Boudreau. But, you know, I agree with Alderman Karen. I think we need to get this plan moving forward. And I would welcome them to come to the committee and discuss any of the issues that were brought up via email or phone calls today, because they're concerns. I mean, we're doing this so we can keep people, have them on a level playing field with other communities. You know, you heard that we lost teachers because of, you know, some of the same issues, and I'd rather not lose some of the good people we have working over at Public Health and the Police Department, people that were affected and will be affected by some of these changes. So, you know, having some dialogue about this after this meeting, I think will help me make this decision favorable. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and 018-008 is adopted. New business resolutions.
First reading of Resolution 18-017, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Nashua, New Hampshire and UAW Local 2322 Clerical and Technical Unit from July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2020, and related transfers.
Additional sponsors, Alderwoman Wilshire, Alderwoman Melissa Golia, Alderman Dowd, and R18-017 will be assigned to the Budget Review Committee.
Alderman McCarthy.
Oh, and Alderman Klee. Alderwoman Klee.
First reading of Resolution 18-018, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Nashua, New Hampshire and UAW Local 2322 Professional Unit from July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2020, and related transfers.
Additional sponsors, Alderwoman Wilshire, Alderman Dowd, Alderwoman Klee, Alderman Laws, Alderwoman Harriet Gathright, and Alderwoman Melissa Golia. And R18-018 will be assigned to the Budget Review Committee. If there are no objections, the rules will be so far suspended to accept the first reading of resolution received after the agenda was prepared.
First reading of a Resolution 18-019 relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget for the City of Nashua General, Enterprise, and Special Revenue Funds.
And if there are no objections, the first reading of R18-019 will be accepted. It'll be assigned to the Budget Review Committee, and a public hearing will be scheduled for Thursday, May 17th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Nashua High School North Auditorium. New business ordinances.
First reading of Ordinance 18-009 prohibiting parking on a portion of the south side of Prospect Street.
Any additional sponsors? Alderman Dowd. And 018-009 will be assigned to the Committee on Infrastructure. period for general public comment. No one has signed up. Remarks by members of the Board of Aldermen. I'll start on this side tonight. Alderman Dowd.
I just want to say that the budget committee, of course, committee announcements will be next, but tomorrow night's going to be the first budget committee, but I wanted to relate that I had put together a description of the budget book that you have before you tonight, so the new members have an idea of what's in the budget book, how it's structured, and so you can get a handle on that as we go forward with the budget process.
Alderwoman Lizzie Golia.
I would just like to remind everyone that next week we have an election to fill the vacancy on the school board. And I know people have said to me they're not sure about who's running and what their positions are. But if you go online on the education channel, there is an interview with Ed Lecious and the two candidates, if people would like to get more information. And then my second piece is just to wish a Happy New Year to the members of our community who will be celebrating Persian New Year next week. Thank you.
Alderman Jody, I think, was next.
Today I had the pleasure of visiting the board of the Department of Public Works, and I encourage all my fellow aldermen to take up Director Foto's invitation to all of you to come and visit the board of, or the Department of Public Works. It was very interesting, especially right after the snowstorm, to see to get an explanation of how the city deals with the snowstorms and the extent of the Department of Public Works and everything that's involved. And it also included a tour of the landfill. And you know, recycling is something near and dear to my heart. But I don't think most of us understand the full extent of the problems involved in recycling. I didn't know, and most of us probably don't know, that when the recycling program started, it was a benefit to the city because we were able to sell the recycling material and get money for it. And now we are paying people to take this recycling material away. And I was told today that that the cost of doing that is increasing and is expected to increase a lot more in the next year and in the following years. And whether or not we can continue to, I guess the city is going to have a discussion about the cost of taking recycling material away, and you know, what the benefit is to the city. That's going to be an ongoing discussion. Coincidentally, a school that's in my ward, the nature of things, a class asked me to come and visit them tomorrow to talk about, they want to sponsor an ordinance to prohibit or to ban plastic bags. Plastic bags are a problem because as I've looked into this thing, plastic bags do not biodegrade, they photodegrade, which means that they don't degrade like biomaterial does. They degrade when they're exposed to the sun. So when we bury them in the landfill, they don't degrade, they stay there forever. And even when they're exposed to the sunlight, photodegrade doesn't mean that they go back into their natural state. They go into smaller and smaller pieces. And if you look into this, you find out that that plastic bags go into these smaller and smaller pieces and end up, for example, in the oceans. fish eat these things. So those of us who think we're eating fish for our health suddenly realize that we're eating bits and pieces of plastic as we're consuming the fish. Birds are eating these pieces of plastic. So this is an environmental disaster. And, probably the solution long-term is to eliminate these things at the source rather than trying to deal with them as they evolve into, through being distributed in the different products that we use. But this is an adventure I'm going on with the school children, and you're not going to hear. You haven't heard the last from me on this. I've talked to people who tried to do this, pass this type of ordinance in Portsmouth, and they ran into a problem, as you know, and maybe a lot of other people out there don't know. The city can't do anything unless the state legislature says it can do it. And one of the problems is whether or not the state legislature would enable us to do anything about this. Bills before the House and the Senate have failed in the past, so that might be another battle that will be coming up. I might be asking the help of our state legislators to help enable us to have the choice whether or not to eliminate these things. But in the meantime, we can certainly embark upon a public relations campaign to educate people about the problem that plastic bags in particular and plastics in general present to the environment and present to the city. And so you'll be hearing more from me on this, and thank you for indulging me tonight.
I can tell you that the current opinion of the city attorney is that we do have the right to pass that bill, because I inquired about it yesterday. I also had an email exchange with one of the students you'll be meeting with tomorrow, who has at her disposal a lengthy treatise on why it's so hard for government to pass simple bills. And I would point out that if we were to ban them, the irony is we have another ordinance that requires that every bit of trash you send to the landfill be in a plastic bag. Other remarks, Alderwoman Lizzie Gold?
So I just remembered, I sent an email to the new members of the board, but just as a reminder, NRPC is having their annual meeting on Thursday, March 29th, and I know there's an RSVP, so our next meeting will just be a couple days before, so I just wanted to remind you about that event. And as I had indicated to the new members, it's a good opportunity to meet other people in the region, as well as the new executive director, who is from Nashua.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the teacher's contract. I know that in the last year I spoke to a lot of teachers, including Mr. Hoffman, and I know there was a lot of hard work put into this, and I hope that is a step forward in stopping that out-migration of mid-tenured teachers, because that's really important to our city.
Alderman Tenza, did you have your hand up?
I did, yes, thank you. A couple of weeks ago, when my kids were running around the yard in their shorts in spring-like weather, it was February vacation. We had the chance to participate in some of the programming down at the public library here in Nashua. And I just wanted to comment on what an asset that is. I'm always struck when we go down to the library. Especially the children's room, how much programming they have going on an ongoing basis, not just for kids, but also programming that's geared towards teens and adults. the meeting space that they've developed down in their basement is just fantastic, and I think much needed throughout the city here. So we did a great craft. Miss Kathy was great. They always enjoy her company when they go down to the children's room, and so I hope that people will remember that it's there and participate, utilize that great asset that the city has.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. Mr. President, I'd just like to re-echo the sentiments of Chief Gallipo. After spending 35 years on the fire department, I had the opportunity to work with the chief, both as a firefighter and as an officer and as a deputy chief. Chief Gallipo kind of chased me in my career and to the point that when I became captain, he filled my vacancy as lieutenant, and I got to see him as he developed and everything and became a very fine chief officer for the city of Nashua, and just to say we were very well served. So I wish the chief farewell and enjoy his time wherever he goes. If he gets bored, we'll keep a seat open here for him if he so wishes, you know. But I wish him the best of luck. The second thing, Mr. President, I would like to say is, in case you can't tell by the shamrock on my lapel or my mint green shirt, Saturday is St. Patty's Day. So to all my Irish friends, or to my good friends who think they are Irish, that's good enough for me, please enjoy the day. Remember, there is Uber, you know what I mean? So be responsible, but come down and share. And if your beer's green, it isn't really Irish, to tell you the truth, but if I see you, come out and enjoy a Guinness with me. So, Sláinte, best happy St. Patty's Day to all. Thank you.
I would usually say something like "Go Patriots," but it seems like they're all gone. Committee announcements? Nobody? Is there a motion? Alderwoman Wilshire. Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned at 8:27.